Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. We are back in Clubhouse 5, just off of Leicester Square near Chinatown. A fine football place to watch. That didn't really make sense, but nevertheless, you got the drift of what I was trying to say. Patrick Van Straat and Henry Hill have joined me today. Hennis, how are you?
Yeah, good. You've just told me some bad news.
I have, that we're going to come on to in a little bit. It's a dagger to the heart of Henry Hill, but it's not confirmed news. It does involve João Palhinha. And you guys are watching this on Sunday. We are recording this the day before deadline day, okay?
Woof.
Bear that in mind. The day before deadline day. We will be reacting to some of the deadline day stuff on Monday Vibes that goes live tomorrow, okay? So please be patient with us. Pato, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm very well. It's cold, which I like. Autumn's coming, which I like. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm slightly happy that it started to get a bit of a chill in the air.
Yeah.
We got about 3 days of sunshine.
Oh,
What are you on
shut
about?
up, mate. Half of Europe's burning.
I love the
Don't you feel
sunshine,
bad?
me. Shut up.
Yeah. Right, anyway, as you can see from the title today, we are doing what we did last year, where we look back on the first month of the Premier League and see what it's taught us. Now, we asked on Twitter for your suggestions for your own clubs. Okay, so you sent in what you've learned. We're going to react to it and see if we agree, give you some thoughts, and a general consensus around each and every one of the 20 Premier League sides. We're going to be going in alphabetical order, and we're going to be starting with Arsenal, where Chris Lampett tweeted in to say he learned that Partey is not a right back. Pat, he's not happy.
I think that Arteta would agree with you. I don't think he's really playing as a right back. I don't know. I don't really think the issue... I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Partey's been quite bad. Though, if you look at the raw numbers, you know, he's like 2.5 dribbles a game. He's leading the side in progressive passes and passes into the final third. So he's still kind of doing that stuff. It doesn't look like he knows where to be. Because obviously Rice is in the position that Partey actually wants to find himself in. But I feel like this would not be a problem if the rest of the back line was really clicking, which I don't think it is right now. Like, Arsenal have actually been... by the underlying numbers, I think, better than people think. I mean, mostly down to this last game, where obviously they were behind early and like really wrapped up the XG against Fulham. But they're third in the league by expected goal difference. It goes City, and then it goes Brentford, and then it goes Arsenal. I mean, they're also kind of... they're giving up the second fewest shots in the league, but I mean, it does just feel right now that a lot of people don't quite know what they're meant to be doing. Like Partey's not quite sure. Obviously, we've seen pretty much 3 defensive lineups, you know, like different players playing on the left in the early stages of the season. Like we've seen Timber, we've seen Tomiyasu, we've seen Kivior, we've seen Zinchenko. Havertz as well is clearly still settling in. I thought he had quite a bad first game. I thought he had a pretty good second game. The third game, I thought he was kind of on the ball. He was terrible, though his movement was very good. Like Fulham weren't really able to pick him up, and he constantly got in dangerous positions. It's just that he couldn't do anything once he got there. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of kind of clunkiness with Arsenal right now. It just feels like the gears aren't quite, you know, in the right place. However, they've been okay, and I sort of think that after a month of the season, it'll be all right. And they do always have the option of just going back to the standard thing. Like, I mean, for example, they're playing Man United this weekend. It would not be surprising to see, you know, Zinchenko, Gabriel, Saliba, White, and see a double pivot basically.
Especially now Zinchenko's back.
Yeah,
Zinchenko's return has a massive effect on this.
I completely agree. So I think, I don't know, I'm quite down on Arsenal in a way, in that I think they are probably going to have a stretch of the season where they are significantly worse maybe than they were last year.
Yeah.
Or maybe more like they looked at the end of last season, where they're still getting things in gear, and the hope would be that they can then reach a higher level at the end of the season. But yeah, I mean, I haven't been impressed by them, if that's what it is.
They have changed their system quite a lot. There's a few new bodies they're trying to integrate. I wouldn't get down on this at all. Partey did play right back at Atletico.
Is it the right idea to do that, though? Is it the right idea to change the system?
Well,
I think that's what Arsenal fans are questioning, isn't it?
But if you look at the style of play they're trying to promote, their possession levels are huge at the moment. If you look at the goals they conceded, okay, Nottingham Forest breakaway goal, but the 2 goals against Fulham just come from individual errors and bad marking. That's the only really way that they've been got at this season. I think that on 7 points, it's fine. If Sheffield United managed to hold on against City, they're both on 7 points, and it doesn't look too bad. It's just because City have got that point advantage already that people are going, oh, wait a minute, Arsenal just drew at Fulham. What a disgrace kind of thing. It's really not that doom and gloom. Partey can play right back if needs be in this system, where the defence is kind of chopping and changing all the time at the moment. And as you said, his underlying numbers, he's actually been all right there in terms of what he's been producing, tackles, progressive passes and whatnot, and he's trying to do that inverted fullback role. Is this the right thing to do? I don't know. When you looked in the midfield last season with the structure that Granit Xhaka and Partey had in the midfield that provided, obviously moving away from that and having Rice with Havertz and Odegaard, which is obviously very attacking, and trying to promote Partey as an inverted right back in that new system. What's better? The underlying numbers would say last season's start compared to this season, but at the same time, it depends where Arsenal wants to go. If Arteta thinks that high possession, kind of suffocating football is the answer, then yes, Partey is fine playing at right back.
Yeah, bit of patience needed by certain fan bases that we're going to come across today. Let's go on to Aston Villa. Dom Phillips sent this one in. He said, Villa going in a great direction. Diaby has transformed the attack, and Emery is having us play like a top team. The midfield is so good, Tielemans doesn't even get in it, but we will miss Mings' physicality and leadership. I have to say, I know they got battered opening day, Villa, but even the battering, I thought there were moments in that game where Villa looked like decent level side. I really, really like the formation that Emery's lining up with, in Matty Cash in this slightly more advanced role on the right-hand side. I think that it's very exciting. And I know that Mings' injury would have been detrimental in seasons gone by, but with the addition of Pau Torres, we've seen Clement Longley arrive this week as well. I think they've made some really, really astute signings, Aston Villa. They've got one of the best coaches in the Premier League. I think since Unai Emery arrived at Villa, only Pep Guardiola has taken more points in the Premier League than him. Okay, some of the football can be slightly functional, but I think they are not necessarily a shoe-in for top 8, but definitely pushing for top 6.
It's not just the new signings, it's the elevation of the players they already have. Like even Matty Cash looks undisputed at right back. Now Concert as well. Leon Bailey finally getting involved in the goals on a more consistent basis. Ollie Watkins is in such great form. I'm pretty sure he could be included in the England squad. We'll see by the time this goes out. Should be involved as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, they look so good, and they keep on teams, which I really like. There's no this kind of conservative Unai Emery ball of sort of sitting back that we saw at Villarreal against Hibernian. I know it's Hibernian, but they could have easily gone there and sort of been overwhelmed by that big moment for that Scottish crowd. But they just battered them from the start, and we saw that in all the other the other 2 games that they've
battered
played in
Everton as well, and let's go to Burnley.
This is the point. This is the point. They just stick it on them. They stick it on them, and they don't let the opposition have a moment to breathe. And I think it was Matty Cash saying that, like, Emery tells them exactly how the game's going to go beforehand, and like 90% of the time, it goes exactly like that. It was against Burnley. He said, we knew if we just sit off Burnley and let them come at us, he said that our moments will come, and it just happened exactly as it's played out. I think Unai Emery, it's just like the perfect level of club for him, with the perfect level of ambition. Great the ownership, you've got to give them credit too for the amount of money they've been spending, almost 500 million over the last five seasons now. So, and
Diaby does look red hot. Like, we were all anticipating Diaby being red hot, but he's also kind of drifting into these more central areas at times, which I certainly wasn't necessarily expecting. And he's having serious, significant impact in those positions. And with a midfield 2 sat behind him with Douglas Luiz, Boubacar Kamara, you've got to say it's very solid. With Jacob Ramsey still to come back as well.
Longley coming in as well. Like, I mean, it looks like I think it'd be interesting to see how teams adapt to them, because obviously it is a side kind of built to counter-attack. And like that thing about Burnley, like clearly what they're saying is, well, we want to counter-attack and we know they're going to give us chances to do it. It'll be interesting to see how they do against teams that kind of suffocate them, that hold all the ball, but are better at dealing with counters, like City, like Arsenal. It'll be interesting to see how they deal with teams that just don't come out at them at all, but play a much more defensive brand of football. But honestly, I look at the talent that Emery's got there, and I think this talent is probably... It might be as good, and it's certainly better distributed than like the squad he had at Arsenal at first. I think it's really, really good across the board. Like the first 11 is great. How will they cope if they get significant injuries? Always a question. But I mean,
they've already got one to the captain, and they seem to be
this. I like this tweet because he says top 6 is so on. Like, you're like, that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah.
My worry is that if they start getting good results and people start talking about top 4 or whatever, then that will concern me a little bit, because I don't think that that's terribly likely. So if their like hope is top 6, great. I think they'll have a fun season.
Yeah, and serious contenders in Europe as well, I think, under Unai Emery.
No one wants to draw them. No one wants to draw them.
Let's go to Bournemouth then. Luke Best is a Bournemouth fan. He says, with Adams and Scott injured, a new solid defensive midfielder is needed badly to fill the void left by Jefferson Lerma, of course, out of contract. He's joined Crystal Palace, and they do have one of the most nightmarish starts to a season of any side in the Premier League. It's like with Iraola's arrival, obviously it's a drastic change in how they want to play. It's much more front foot. It's much higher pressing numbers. And the opening games, they've already played Liverpool and Spurs and West Ham. Then they've got Brentford, Chelsea, Brighton, Arsenal in the next 4 games. So it's pretty much a horror start, but you get them out of the way at least.
And also they can use Phil Billing as a defensive midfielder. Like that is where he initially played and was pretty decent there. Like when he went down with Huddersfield. Was it Huddersfield that he was with?
Yeah. And they might have signed someone by now.
Because if they drop him back and then they can play Hamad Junior Traore like a bit further forward. And actually I think that Traore, Ouattara, like they have made signings. They've made really cool signings that I think actually fit the way Iraola wants to play, which is a press and possess attack.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if I'd necessarily like predict them to stay up, but I'm quite bullish on Bournemouth. I think they've made smart moves for the future, and they do have options there. If they can get a DM in before the deadline, I absolutely would do that.
Well, they've got Tyler Adams, but he's out injured, haven't they?
Well, Tyler Adams, I think, could be a transformative player for that team. Like, if Tyler Adams comes in and he's fit, good Tyler Adams, then suddenly I look at that side and I think there are like 5 players here who I really, really rate, and I really rate Iraola. So, yeah, exactly. You get those games out of the way, and so long as the club kind of understand, they're like, look, we've signed young players, we're going to deal with them. We've got a new manager, we're going to have to deal with it. We're going to have some bad results because we've got a tough schedule. It's kind of like the Spurs thing on a smaller scale. It's like, understand it's a process and everything will be fine. Get impatient and it will be a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, Rayo Vallecano basically have been awful since Iraola left the club. It just kind of shows how important he was there. I agree that a lot of new signs. If you look at that back line they've been playing, Aarons and Kirkej, they're both new as well. Even since January, the amount of new additions they've got through the door. They do look currently like a team of individuals learning, trying to play as a team, and it doesn't help that tough start. You're exactly right. Like patience they'll need, but you never know. Like owners coming into the game, like how much patience they're willing to afford. But I think by January we'll start to see really what Bournemouth are about. I just hope they're in a position to kind of show it.
Yeah, a midfield that contains Tyler Adams and Alex Scott is seriously exciting stuff. And they've also got Ouattara to come back from injury as well. He was he's excellent
really good,
post January for them. Let's go to Brentford, where patch of the day, Dan says he's a Brentford fan. We're actually a lot better placed to not just survive but thrive without Tony than most people were thinking at the time of his ban. Frank has consistently evolved his team and tactics to combat the problems we faced, and he's done it again. I mean, the underlying numbers are again great for Brentford, aren't they? Yeah. Like, look like they're going to score a bunch of goals even without Ivan Toney. Great to see Kevin Schade score what will be a massive confidence-boosting goal at the weekend, and a hell of a goal at that. Yeah. But I just think the midfield structure works as well, man. Like, that Norgard, Jensen, like, pairing in there works so well.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm quite surprised at how good they've been. It just proves that sometimes when the big player is out, other players are willing to step up. And by the time this goes out, we've seen the budget they've been trying to throw around for another guy like Gonzalez and Brendan Johnson. Like Brentford could be making a big statement signing by the end of this window to really boost that side even more. It's remarkable, and I think it just goes back to Thomas Frank really. The manager is so important to that system, and he is the one that ultimately inspires these players, and he's getting the best out of a great squad. And yeah, like you said, Schade, lots of raw potential, unbelievable speed. If he can convert that into goals, then Brentford are going to be a serious problem again this season.
Do you see a world in which Tony plays for Brentford again?
Sure.
You don't. I am convinced that it's going to roll around to January and he's going to be moved on straight away.
I don't know. Like, I mean, if somebody offers big money, because he's kind of getting to that point now where you're exhausting your opportunities to get that big money. If somebody offers like 60 mil or something for him in January, you look at him and he's 27, he might be 28 by then. You kind of think, yeah, okay, maybe that's the time to take it. But they've priced him out of a move this window. They've been saying we want 80. So obviously, from their point of view, they're like, we're completely fine to run out the clock on this. And it's kind of like the Palhinha thing, which we'll come on to in a bit. You can just play hardball for long enough that the window closes.
Yeah. Do you not think that if he comes back in January and he scores a load of goals again and he proves that he's still got it after 6 months of not playing, then they can go, well, look, he really is the real deal. You have to pay.
Maybe. I just think we're going to get to January and Richarlison would have scored 4 goals and Tottenham are going to be going,
Hello.
Hello.
But then Brentford won't mind. They'll be
Hey,
like,
mate.
okay, give us the money and we will go and spend it on probably 3 guys, and not really worry about it.
It's a win-win for Brentford. If they're in a good position and then they get a load of money for Tony, who's not been playing for them, then it's just like
Massive.
They're laughing.
They do just have one of the best managers in the league, man.
Yeah,
I think Thomas Frank is amazing. He's done something that most managers coming up can't do, which is transition from a team that has like 60% of the ball to a team that can play on the counter attack, that can play like deep block defensive football. They can do like 3 or 4 things, Brentford, and they do them all really, really well. And Henry's absolutely right. Like, Thomas Frank is the special sauce on that side. I mean, they've got loads of players I rate, but Thomas Frank, I think, is a hugely underrated coach.
Yeah, let's go to Brighton. Nathan Wesley sends in his thoughts. He says, as expected, losing both McAllister and Caicedo has left us lacking physicality in midfield. Signing Baleba will help us massively with this.
How do we know?
don't know. Milner and Dahoud will be wise heads that will help our young players, but our XG against is a bit of a worry. Now, we are recording this the day after Ansu Fati has seemingly confirmed he's had the here we go from Fabrizio Romano that he is joining Brighton. It is honestly, that's one of the best moves of the window, isn't it?
It's so exciting.
The fact that he was going to Tottenham yesterday and then I see the here we go to Brighton come through the same day is just awesome.
It's so cool.
And do you know what's funniest? He's like, he's not a guaranteed starter for Brighton. Like, obviously we're talking about a player who was, youngest player in 85 years for Barcelona and Spain, has had chronic injuries. But, we were talking about in 2020, 2021, the best young player in the world, people were saying.
But yeah, you're right. You look at the team now and you say, who's the top player? Who's the top player in the league by expected goals and assists right now? Who's played a decent number of minutes so far? Solly March. Who on the left is second in progressive carries, progressive receptions to Bukayo Saka, has basically played exactly like Bukayo Saka this season. Kaoru Mitoma. So you look at it and you're like, I mean, well, you can play him in the hole, you can play him up front, you can play him on either wing.
The beauty, isn't it?
You can do loads of stuff with it, but I just think that is such a statement signing. On the other hand, as you say, like, I looked at the expected goals per shot against. So basically, the raw quality, it's like 0.18. So that means like every shot against Brighton has had on average an 18% chance of going in, which is quite high. It's almost twice Premier League.
It was helped by the West Ham, when they only had about 3 shots and they were all huge shots, and they had about 10% of the ball and managed to come away with a 3-1 win there. So that definitely helped.
I'm sorry, I've cut you off like 3 times.
No, you haven't really. I think we've got to give Igor an opportunity to,
because Webster was terrible.
Bet into that side. I think losing Colwill is a big problem, but at the same time, the problem almost with Brighton is the secret's out on them. They're just almost emerging as such a force, and as you say, like getting Fati through the door from Barcelona is just sort of a transfer. I think it looked like he was nailed on to go to Sevilla or something like that, but for Brighton to come in and get him is seriously cool. But yeah, I'm not too worried about them. I know the XGA isn't great, but against West Ham, the goals they conceded were very lazy. Like the fact that they could just lump it up to a winger.
Yeah, they were West Ham goals, weren't they?
Yeah, they're
Antonio bullying people in Colombia.
Mate, Antonio's finished. We'll get on to him later. He's turning into a serious player. But yeah, Brighton, I wouldn't worry too much. Baleba, he's got a lot of hype from Lille. A lot of hype. He's only played for one year. But if there's one scouting network I trust, it's Brighton's to get it right. Yeah. So,
and if they're paying that big a fee, it's big money for Brighton.
Is it? I mean, yeah, but if he's good,
is, man. It's the second highest transfer fee in the club's history.
But if he's good, he's immediately worth like 70 million. So it's a win-win for them,
and they can afford it, can't they? They've got about 10 billion. And
if he's rubbish, they've got like another 400 million worth in the squad. They can just sell on at various points. They're completely fine.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Let's go to the next one then. This is Burnley.
Ugh.
Jimmy Claret.
How are we still
Burnley.
in the B's?
I know. We need a left back. We know Company is tactically astute, but he needs to be perceptive and adaptive in order to manage this league. Villa exploited our midfield spaces well. Others will be able to do so too. Company can't or won't mid-match. Confident he will, though. Thoughts on Company?
He's bought a lot. It's just tons of players have gone into that team, and I know we saw with Nottingham Forest it kind of worked out last season, but I wonder if the squad was in such of a dire need of a shake-up in the way that the Forest squad was coming into the league. I don't know.
They didn't have so much of a choice, though, did they? Because of the amount of loan players. A bit like Forest, a lot of players were on loan at that side. likes of Maatsen, the likes of Ter.
I think they need to wise up a little bit. They obviously played really expansive sort of attacking football in the Championship, but it just doesn't necessarily apply in the Premier League. I think Company needs to be
I think you've got to give him a chance, man. I think this is a little bit like Forest. It was a team very much built on young talent that was in large parts loaned to the club. They've not been able to recruit that talent back in the likes of Ian Maatsen. You know, they've actively tried to bring back Ian Maatsen. We're talking about left backs here from Jimmy. They clearly wanted to bring Ian Maatsen back to the club. Chelsea have said no on multiple occasions. They wanted to bring Teller back to the club. He's ended up at Leverkusen. I think there are players that have come in like Amdouni, who have come in off of the back of really, really strong seasons. You know, in Amdouni's case, in the Conference League, I think he was joint top scorer, wasn't he? I think he's got 5 in 4 for his national side as well. So they're just going to take a bit of time to bed in because they've had to bring players in to cover for loan players that were so exceptional last season. I think, you know, give a little bit like Bournemouth, give Vincent Kompany a bit of time here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, it's hard to draw conclusions about them because they've played Villa and City.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah,
that's rough for anybody. But I think, honestly, I look at the promoted sides. I think promotion maybe came a little bit soon for all 3 of them. That doesn't mean they can't stay up because I also think the bottom of the Premier League's quite weak because the teams that went down last season were not necessarily the worst in the league. So I think almost anyone can survive this year, but it might just mean that the first couple of months of the season, maybe you get blown out a few times. There are some bloodbaths, and I think, as you say, young team, young manager, you've kind of got to accept that in service of a greater goal, which is building a style, building a squad, developing talent.
Yeah, exactly. And they had the Luton game postponed because of the Kenilworth Road situation. Sure. So if they'd have gone there and won 2-0 or something, I think we'd be talking about a totally different situation here. But it's just because they've played City and Villa that people are very, very negative early doors. Dan is a Chelsea fan. He says optimistic, but still need time to gel. Shock. It's shown Poch back Sterling to the moon and back and looks determined to get the most out of Jackson. Midfield will take the longest to get together, but once it's set for a decade. Thiago Silva still the best CB at the club.
I wouldn't have said why should midfield take the longest to get together? I mean, like, Enzo is settled and is a great passer and works hard defensively. Caicedo should just slot in and do defensive midfield stuff. Like I don't really see why that should take the longest to gel. I think the attack should take the longest to gel because no one knows what the best lineup is. A bunch of guys are injured. There's no proper centre forward.
What did you think to the Palmer signing yesterday? £45 million.
Sure, like do that. Like he's
I don't get it.
He's a completely unknown quantity. I'm sorry. I know he had a couple of good games at the beginning of the season, but he's older than Bukayo Saka. He's like 4 months older than Bukayo Saka. So when he's playing, to be honest, he should be ready to make a difference because he's actually kind of 2-3 years older than like Garnacho, for example, breaking through.
But where's he going to play? Where's his minutes coming from?
I wonder if they're going to be like, are you going to play up front? Like, I really don't know. Like, because what they need is a centre forward. But he's right in some senses. Like, the press is already kind of working. Like, they've got the 3rd highest press in the league. I thought they're pretty impressive against Liverpool. I don't know, like, they're not giving up a huge amount of shots. The shots they give up are very low quality. Like, this is promising stuff too, but it is going to take some time to gel. And I do think the depth in the squad is fairly shocking, given the amount of money they've spent. Like, I just look at them and I'm like, what is this bench? It's garbage.
Yeah, you're right. That bench.
They've got injury problems, haven't they?
Even so,
they've got like 40 players on the books.
Yeah, to spend like $1 billion and have a bench made up of like no-name academy graduates, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, is kind of.
But they've got a lot of injury problems in that team, haven't they?
Potentially, but
like I kind of agree.
What?
I agree that the squad looks surprisingly weak. You know, if Enzo gets injured, I wonder who plays in midfield.
The positives. Sterling looks back to his best, which is a real
Sterling
win.
looks
so
outrageous.
good,
and that's great. That's great for everyone. I think Nicholas Jackson is living up to my pre-season hopes. He looks class when he's on the ball. The way that he turns, like dribbles at defenders, I think is wicked to watch. So they've got like 2 goal-scoring outlets out there, and you know, Enzo is Enzo. They at least got some leadership at the back in Thiago Silva. Cole Will's come in and looks right at home in that like, he's probably going to be playing there for years and years. So there are plenty of positives, and Poch looks like he's festering more of a spirit in that side. I still just wonder what the ceiling is for this team this season. I just feel like they have to get Champions League. Like, surely, to meet their financial demands. Like, surely they have to get Champions League.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Oh my God.
They have to get top 4 with the amount of money spent.
That's such a big ask.
But yeah, Chelsea has been much discussed, so we're going to move on to Crystal Palace, I think,
Yes.
where Alfie Penfold says, Palace, things have been broadly positive, with good results away at Sheffield United and an epic comeback against Plymouth in the Cup. Main issues continue to be depth, lose one or two first-team players, and will struggle to score goals and remain in the division.
I don't worry about them remaining in the division. I think
the forward line...
there are like 8 teams in the league worse than Palace.
Yeah, and like any side with Eze in it is just going to be fun. Like, I really love Eze, man. I think he's so good.
It's not even that. They've got Gehi and Anderson as their centre halves. Like, they're solid.
Jefferson Lerma and Sheikh Dakura at the back.
Dean Henderson in goal now.
I think that's a great signing, by the way, Dean Henderson.
Yeah, it's good.
£15 million, I think. Like, very solid Premier League level goalkeeper who's going to, lead a back line and is a fairly good age. I think he's 25 or 26. Like, he's going to be there for a while if he can stay injury free, which he's struggled to do throughout his career so far.
Look, I know this as a Fulham fan. As long as they just accept that just being in the Premier League is just the golden ticket for them, then it's fine. Like, if the second Palace start getting lofty expectations for this team is where things start going wrong. Like, they are going to be fine. They're going to probably survive, and I think that has to be taken down.
And there has to be huge positives with the fact that Elise signed his new contract. Yeah. They managed to stave off Man City's interest in Eze. France is still to come back from his injury that he's arrived with from Brazil. And Eduard looks pretty decent at the start of the season under Hodgson.
And also Mateta. Like, everyone hates Mateta, but he always scores. He scored a hat-trick the other day. Like, I don't know. What I want from Elise is for Elise to play regularly and play well. Whereas what we've had from Elise is one season where he didn't play regularly but looked amazing. One season where he played a lot but actually wasn't that great in the numbers. So now we need him to put it all together this year, and he's at an age where you would want to start to see that happening. I did feel a little bit concerned after that Arsenal game. They played quite a long time against 10 men and created almost nothing. And I know Arsenal have like a decent defence, like, because Arteta, I think, sneakily, everyone says he's like Pep, but he's also like Moyes, right? Like, he quite likes to bunker. He's quite conservative in lots of ways. But I was kind of shocked that the only half chance they created in that one was the one that, like, Tyreek Mitchell blasts over, and even that I don't think was that big a chance. So I kind of thought I would like to see them do more in that situation. But they've also got one of the best names in the league. They've got, Rak-Saki, like, who came off the bench in that match, and he has had a pretty decent pedigree in his short career up to now. So I don't know. I like Palace, and I do think their academy is always an interesting ground to look for talent. So
I think they'll be fine.
I would like Palace to do well. I wouldn't worry about relegation, honestly.
Yeah, I think I had them like 15th or something.
I think that's fair.
In my preseason predictions. I'm not sure I would change too much. Okay, Everton up next. And it's a long tweet from Amori, so I'm not going to read it all out, but let's focus on one area. Goal scoring. Still our main problem. No goals scored in the league. 13th in the table for XG. So they're underperforming by 5 already. They're the
Don't worry about it.
Biggest underperformers in the league last year, weren't they, by expected goals? But I think that was a 10-goal swing. Pat, you're a bit more positive about Everton than most.
13th in the table for XG. Like, I mean, teams don't underperform forever. Like, it just doesn't happen because you can have one player underperform, but you're not going to have the whole team underperform at once unless you get super, super unlucky. And I don't see why that would be the case. When I watch them, I'm like, this looks like what we thought a good Dyche Everton would look like. I think they've been surprisingly decent to watch. I think they've clearly got quite a solid plan in how they want to play. I think they've deserved better results so far. Like, are there weaknesses in the squad? Sure, there have been weaknesses there for a long time, but it's not hard to look at that team and think, I could see this being 14th in the league. I think it's more likely to be in the 16th range, but they've brought in a striker now who's a good age and I think a good price.
Scored his debut. Scored that last night, better.
So I kind of think I don't really worry about this. I mean, like, Calvert-Lewin just like still cannot stay fit. Like, he just cannot do it.
Fractured eye socket on
That's
the
unlucky,
chest.
man.
That's really rough.
He's cursed at the moment, Calvert.
But I like Everton. I think I want to see them be okay. And saying, 0 goals scored, but we're 13th in the league, like, we just cannot put the ball in the net. It's like that honestly, that doesn't last forever. If you continue to put up expected goals, teams revert to expected goals over time.
But do you not worry of Everton? The longer their losing streak goes on, the more negativity that feeds into that club, the more that
there's
the
a
fan
lot of
base
negativity.
You can see them like stupidly pulling the trigger on Sean Dyche if they start panicking. It's that kind of club at the moment. And Beto, I've watched him at Udinese. He's quite raw. Like, he's got a pretty horrific first touch. It's not going to be pretty. He's not like a 15-goal a season striker.
5 years ago, he was working at KFC.
Well,
That's
I mean,
cool,
listen. Fair play to him.
Yeah,
but
that's pretty sick.
I I wouldn't be banking on him to save, to rescue them from the hole that they're in at the moment. But yeah, as Pat says,
but it's better than, mate. They put Michael Keane up front against Wolves for like 15 minutes, didn't they?
Sure, but
I'm my fave.
I am worried about Everton. I'm seriously worried about them.
Yeah,
I almost feel like relegation is maybe what this club needs, just to like hit the reset.
No.
I know what
Not
you
with
mean,
that stadium
but
in the
they
bit of
actually
works,
will
man.
die. I do think relegation could genuinely kill Everton, but
Yeah.
all they need really is to scrape survival for 2-3 years while turning over some older members of the squad and getting in some half decent.
But they've been scraping survival for 2-3 years without doing that.
No, but what they've been doing also though is like taking weird swings transfer wise. Whereas what they need to do is just build themselves sensibly for a while. You know, like Palace have done it. Palace looked absolutely destined for the Championship a few years ago. They had a really old squad. The squad was overpaid. They kept signing players from other teams who were, you know, cast-offs because they were overpaid and were old. And then basically in the space of pretty much one or two transfer windows, they just like managed to turn it over. Everton just need to do a few more of those things and they'll actually be okay.
Okay, positivity for you Everton fans out there. A rare chink of light
It's
in
going to end
the
now,
curtains.
We're moving on to Fulham.
Yeah, let's end some of that positivity by
I'm
talking
ready
about
for this.
Fulham. Now, as I said, we are shooting this the day before deadline day, so please take that into consideration with Henry's current mood. But Miki says, Fulham, impressive start, but relying heavily on Leno to keep us in games. Having Palhinha back after missing the first two is so key. But will they lose João Palhinha? In talks with Bayern München to the
tricky.
tune of 70 million British pounds.
No, it's not going to be that much, is it? Is that how much we're going to get for him?
I think that's how much you're
Last,
demanding. I mean,
with a day left of the window.
yeah. And no options on the market at all.
Well, it said that according to Sky Sports, I just saw on the screen, it said that Fulham have no intention of selling, and he is just so important to the team. Like, I am impressed with how well we've started so far. I don't care that Leno keeps like getting us out of situations. It's his job.
That is his job.
He's making good saves. Good on him. He's an amazing keeper. I hate this idea that keepers aren't meant to make a save. Do you know what I mean? It's so dumb, man. But yeah, if he goes, because it's not just like the fact that he's just a defensive monster. He actually seems to really care about the club. Do you know what I mean? Like
He's passionate, isn't he?
He puts himself about.
But you do need some goals, mate. I know we're talking about Leno, we're talking about Palhinha.
No, I agree.
Mitrovic is gone. Like,
I love the Adama Traore signing though. I think that's great.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well.
It's like it's like low cost, you know. Just do it. Like see how he goes. He's an absolutely horrible player to see come on against you.
but Raul Jimenez to replace Mitrovic.
No, yeah, but he's not replacing Mitrovic.
He
He's
is
adding
replacing
another body
Mitrovic,
through the door.
man.
He's
he
not
almost
because
scored an unreal
Yeah, it
goal
was
against
outrageous.
Arsenal.
Mitrovic is gone.
He's not a
Jimenez is
replacement for
joined.
Mitrovic.
Okay, so
he's
where's
another
the
body through the
replacement
door.
for Mitrovic?
Well, I don't know where it is yet. We'll find out. We're looking for one.
No, but
I
at the
actually
moment, he
recommended Beto. I wanted Beto to be him. I thought Ekitike was going to be him. It looks like Ekitike could be on his way to Frankfurt. You know,
yeah.
there's not actually that many forward options out there for a level of Fulham to kind of.
I agree.
Certainly not replace the Mitrovic goals. That said, we are showing a bit of grit and guile, and I kind of go back to what I said about Thomas Frank. Marco Silva is a huge asset for the club. Like, we've got last year when we were battering you in the FA Cup quarterfinals, we were playing really good football, and I don't think that's going to just magically disappear overnight. Like, even at the end of the season, when I think people thought Fulham were going to drop off dramatically, we still started picking up results and winning games no one was expecting us to again. I'm not worried about being relegated this season. I think we're just going to have to accept that we're not going to be finishing in the top half again, because it's just unrealistic. If Palhinha goes, it's a huge problem and we will concede goals, but I also think we've got the ability to create goals too.
Okay, there you go.
And just run out the clock.
From a Fulham fan.
Just like play hardball, don't answer the
Yeah,
phone,
man,
and like
Bayern.
he's not gonna
It's
like
too late in the window.
exactly. And Palhinha like might be a dick for 48 hours while he's trying to get the move, but once it's apparent the move is going to happen because the window's shut, he's not going to sit on bench all season. Like, he would want to play, and he's not that. You can understand why he wants to move to Bayern, but if Fulham are like, it's far too late.
And it's a Euros, yeah. He's going to want to play in that Portuguese
It's
squad.
what they did for Brighton to Caicedo. They said, you're not going, train away for a bit.
Yeah.
Once this is over, come back and we'll talk then.
Exactly.
Exactly. We think he's going to stay. By the time we watch this, he's probably wearing Lederhosen, drinking a pint of beer. Let's go to Liverpool. Harry says, Liverpool, we've got our spirit back. Last season, we looked drained in a lot of games, which made sense considering we couldn't find any consistency. But the fight I saw away from home versus Chelsea from 30 minutes onwards, and obviously versus Newcastle, was unbelievable. He's talking about the spirit there, Harry. Pat, you're frowning.
Oh, like, what are you on about? Like, I mean, sure. Like, if you feel that way, then great. But I thought against Chelsea, you were outplayed from minute 30. That's how I'd look at it. And against Newcastle, if Darwin Núñez doesn't pretty much put two great finishes, like basically turn 0.35 XG into 2 goals, then you just lose that game. And your fight, like, what's he talking about? Like, I actually don't know what that means with like the fight, because like Newcastle should have been out of sight in that game. Like, Newcastle didn't actually create as much as you would hope to against 10 men, but they could easily have been 2 up and the game would have just been over. Like, so the fight in that sense, like, doesn't really change the fact that like Almiron just, if he puts the shot inside the post, the amount of fight you have doesn't matter. I mean, I just don't really know what Liverpool are going to be. Like, in those 2 games against Newcastle and Chelsea, they put up 2.2 XG and gave up 3.4. They easily could have lost both those games. But the other thing that's weird about them is that 3 games so far, they had 35% possession in one against Chelsea. They had 64% in the next one. Bournemouth. Then they had 41% in the next one. And what I'm saying is, from that, it's extremely hard to know how Liverpool want to play. Because there's only been one game where they actually had the amount of possession you'd expect Liverpool to want to have this season. So I don't really feel like we're in much of a position to judge Liverpool, because I think Liverpool want to have 60% of the ball, and they've only done that in one of their games. So how are they planning to play the rest of the time? Like, it's really hard to know. I still think the attack was great last year.
Yeah,
the attack were pretty great again this year.
Yeah.
But the defense, it wasn't just like, oh, Van Dijk, got a sending off and like that was the problem. It's like Trent was all over the place in that game. The midfield has not clicked yet, and now McAllister obviously got that red card.
Yeah.
Like, Endo's still got a bed in. I don't know. I still look at that team and I think, like, as bad as Fabinho was last season, is there reason to believe the midfield's going to be better this season? I don't know. Not really.
Yeah.
Like, maybe the pressing attack helps. I still just look at them and I'm like, this could be pretty good. It could be pretty bad. But we were talking about them. Maybe they'll be great going into the season. And like, as an Arsenal fan, I was thinking, oh, we haven't started that well. But I also look around the league and I'm like, who has? City. That's basically it.
Everybody's very up and down.
Everybody else is like all over the shop.
It is very, very early. We'll keep on to Luton, where Ryan Hall says, for Luton, many people writing us off already, although we've played 2 very tough away games. Obviously, they played Brighton and Chelsea away from home.
Rough.
Very, very tough. He still thinks Sheffield United, Everton and possibly Wolves could be worse than us.
Not Wolves, I don't think.
Really?
I think...
Those 3? I mean, Forest could be worse than them. Fulham could be worse than them.
I think Luton have prepped well in the form that, some of the signings, even if they go down, players like Teden Mengi, who have been signed on permanent from Manchester United, to Heath Chong coming in from Birmingham, like, very solid championship players. Even if they go down, they've used the money smartly, and they are going to be a very consistent top-level championship side.
I just think their defence is just not good enough, in all honesty. I actually think going forward against Chelsea, I quite liked sort of the creativity of Barkley.
I thought Barkley was good.
And
I actually thought he was good against Chelsea.
The guy they picked up from Birmingham,
Tahith
Chong. I thought he looked quite lively. I like the fact they were getting it out to Ryan Giles, his crossing was off in that game, but still, like, Morris up front. I think going forward, they're fine. They're going to score some goals. I don't think they're going to get completely blown away in this division, but I just think defensively need a bit more nous, and I'm a bit worried about them. But let's just always. I think you can never lose sight of the fact that, like, Luton even being in the Premier League is just an unbelievable achievement, and it's going to be difficult going when you suddenly have to pay out big transfer fees for players, which they've never done before. Like, the whole transition for the club. Whatever happens, I think this is a positive experience for Luton Town. And as you say, as long as they can go back down to the Championship and still be in good shape, it's fine. Like, this is nothing but positive what's happening to them this year.
Yeah. Manchester City, Suyung Patel says Kovacic is signing of the season. That's what he's learnt from the first month of the season. Have you been watching football?
It's
I
not
mean,
gibberish nonsense.
he does look good, Kovacic. Like he looks like he's a
looked good
natural
his whole
fit in
career.
that Man City side. But
Is he better
like,
than Maddison at Spurs, for example?
Yes.
It's
No,
just
totally.
like a natural fit. Like we were all expecting Kovacic to produce 7 out of 10s every week in the best team in the world, weren't we?
And also, it's
alongside
like-
the best defensive midfielder in the world.
It's also quite hard to be like the signing of the season in the team that is already the best team in the league. You're like, what?
Agreed,
What
yeah.
you're going to make the difference between them finishing first and first? Like, amazing! What an impact!
What do we think of the Nunes signing? I want to
Yeah.
just pivot it a little bit to another midfield arrival. £52 million, and it's also Tommy Doyle's gone out, hasn't he? Which a remarkable sell-on fee, by the way, in the Tommy Doyle situation. Have you seen this? Man City 50% of any future fee Wolves sell Tommy Doyle for
That's
is going to Man
bananas.
City, which is astronomically high. Obviously, you're usually like 5-10%.
But at the same
it is
time,
a
they've
low
got
fee.
they've got so much money for Nunes.
Yeah, I think they got another like 5 million overnight here. I don't know what happened overnight, but it was kind of renegotiated the deal, I think, in the early hours, and now it's at over £50 million for Mateus Nunes.
I mean, he hasn't really done anything to deserve that move, in all honesty. But he was pretty poor for most of last season. Turned it on towards the end of the campaign. I think the fact that he stopped training to push for a move 1 year into like a multi-year contract, I think it's pretty disgraceful. Obviously, he wants to go to Manchester City. Obviously, he wants to play under Pep. But I don't think he's even going to get that kind of minutes that he wants. He's not a starter there. He's very much.
Pep loved him, mate. Pep called him the best player or midfielder
Well,
in the world.
he loves
at one
Calvin
stage.
Phillips.
He's
He
put
loved
his money where
Calvin
his mouth
Phillips.
is,
And
fair
he
enough.
loved Calvin Phillips and has played him for about 4 seconds. So I'm not really. I don't listen. Fair play to Nunes. He's fallen upwards. He doesn't have to worry about relegation again. I just.
Wolves
it's
gonna have
just
to reinvest that money.
it's
quick.
just a nothing. It's just a signing, really. For
Yeah.
City.
It's a really expensive signing for a guy with absolutely zero track record. Like, it would not surprise me if Pep does something with him and he's good. And I'm sure people will be like, he had the most completed passes in this game, because people ignore the fact that everyone eats when it comes to passing at City. But like, you could just sign somebody who's just looks better than this. I don't know. Like, there was talk at one point about Eze, wasn't there? I think that would have been really cool. But I mean, like, I'm sure it'll be fine. It doesn't really matter. It's City. Like, who cares? Like, Nunes, it's just too much money. Like, I think Doku is a great signing. I think Kovacic is a great signing. I think Vardio is a great signing. I think Nunes is a man. So I would not be surprised if Pep sends him to the horse doctor and he comes back with 7 legs and he's just unbelievable. But I don't really see why they've done it.
Manchester United, Eric says it's going to be a long season. That's
Was
what he's
that
learned.
Eric Ten Hag?
I could well be.
He's just like, Jesus, if only I had hair to lose.
That's what he's learned, is that it's going to be a long season.
Calm down.
I think United fans need to relax
Yes.
a little bit. I think there's a lot of impatience, a bit of calma, going on at Manchester United right now. Obviously, there are massive injury problems at the club, which never helps. Having your only established left back really in Luke Shaw out for a long period of time, not good. And he's got the backup injured too in Malacia, not ideal. Varane's out for 5 weeks. Mason Mount's out for 2 months. There's injury problems all over the pitch, but
That is bad.
Things take time to bed in, especially when you've got injury problems. Hoyland's arrived injured. The idea that United were just going to immediately overnight improve because they signed 3 players in a drastically different style to the players that were there before, i.e. Onana to De Gea, is just bonkers. It's going to take a little bit of time to get right. United are not going to be competing for the title. They're not Arsenal or Man City this season. But if they can get in and around 85 points and challenge deep in cup competitions, that would be a success for Manchester United this season.
85 points would be a success, yes. I'm sorry, that's
What did we
crazy.
put up? 81 last year, 4 points.
I think that was a bit lucky.
4-point improvement on last season. 5 points maybe. I think United should be looking to improve domestically and challenge deep in the cups. Realistically, they are not Man City. They're not going to compete with a 95-point Man City team. And they're not as good as Arsenal. United fans, just be patient. This idea of Ten Hag out 3 weeks into the season, I just don't get it.
No, it's so dumb.
I don't get
But I
it.
think you got a lot of points last season. I wouldn't be surprised if United were actually better to watch and better in the stats, but actually got fewer points, because I think they were lucky to get so many points last season. In the same way that I think Arsenal could actually be potentially better than last season, but still get fewer points because they ran so hot in the first half of the year. I think that often happens. You know, like Bukayo Saka might be better as a player this year, but get fewer goals and assists because he overperformed XG. Like, I think there's some of that that's going on. Like,
Højlund needs to score some goals as well. Like, United need a striker to score some goals.
But also, they just sort of need to get used to playing with a striker, like a proper striker, and see how that. It annoys me that I feel like Ten Hag has been absolutely clear at every stage. This is a long-term project. Buying players for the future. You know, we've got in Højlund, that's very young. You know, like, it's going to take time, and people are still just like, we look crap. What's going on here? You're like, get a grip. Come on, don't be a baby.
It's like all United seasons. There's going to be a point where you go on a tear and you have a really good run.
Yes.
I think with this side, and everyone will be like, oh look, this is it. You know, this is United. Blah 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 blah. So it will get to that point. I have to say, like, the structuring of that Amrabat loan deal was kind of like a damning reflection.
Insulting.
I mean, there's just massive problems clearly at the top level of the club, but as if we haven't known that for like 20 years that there's massive problems.
We're going to take one of your best players. We're going to give you basically a million for it. If we don't like it, we're going to take some of that money back. Like, it's just, what do you expect them to say?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know whether the Amrabat deal got done at this stage. I mean, final day business of Amrabat and Cucurella coming in on loan.
Really good. I think that'd be really good.
That'd be really good.
That'd be great for you.
Okay, there you go.
Bodies.
Pat and Henry have spoken.
The
Newcastle, the Black and White Sheep says the only thing that can stop us from getting Champions League football is injuries. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think Newcastle have looked good and they have more depth than I was expecting, especially in forward areas. You know, Callum Wilson feels like maybe the second or third best backup striker in the league behind, outrageous.
I thought we were on Nottingham
Alvarez
Forest
and
there.
Liverpool. No, we're on Newcastle, mate. Isaac's looked really, really exceptional at the start of the season again, but I haven't seen the news yet of how long that Botman injury is. If that's a significant injury, then I think that's a big blow for Newcastle. I think having to move Dan Burn in alongside Fabian Schär, bring Lewis Hall in early into the left-back slot, I think that immediately makes that back line worse. But Newcastle's going to be fine. They're going to be a top-6 side. And I just can't wait to see St James's Park in Champions League nights.
Yeah, it's going to be
good.
It's
going to be hell going there. If like Barca or something get drawn against Newcastle and they've got to travel to St James's Park, it's going to be...
the fact they've got... I mean, last year he said they were high on quality and low in depth. And like this year they've slightly... I'd say they still need a few more transfer windows to get this right.
Good.
I agree with you. Like, Eddie Howe has now got some serious options off the bench to change things. Like Callum Wilson, he can bring on. Wilson's...
Harvey Barnes.
Yeah, Harvey Barnes is being kept up by Anthony Gordon, who looks like a new signing in himself. Like, all of his numbers
Hall and Livramento in the fullback slots.
Yeah, it's once... Because so far what we've seen from Howe is him struggling to know when to make these substitutions. Taking off Tonali at the wrong times, taking off Gordon at the wrong times. Once he understands how to use his team to the best effect, then, they're going to be great. They've hardly... That Liverpool loss is a bit of a freak decision. Losing 1-0 to Manchester City, sure, fine. Like, that's fine, isn't it? So it's a tough start to the season. Newcastle looks seriously good, and actually I think they're going to be a problem again. But I should also say, again, they are way ahead of schedule. They weren't meant to get Champions League football last year. They weren't meant to get to a League Cup final last year. If they get Europa League football this season, that's still a remarkable result for Newcastle, because they'd have been dreaming of this last year. Do you know what I mean? It's they are a few windows away from being where they want to be in terms of like a major force, but they're still playing great football. They've got a great manager, and it's fine.
And they've had one of the hardest starts of the season of any team. But Liverpool, City, Villa.
But I do think they should be realistic and accept that, like, maybe you do drop out of the Champions League. Like I'm not saying that will happen, but I'm just saying that, like, those things can easily happen. The margins are pretty fine. A couple of other injuries, and it's easy to see it happening. And a thing to watch with them will be how their press continues this season, because they ran really, really hard last year, and they had, game-wise, a relatively short campaign. They had fewer games. How will they do with more games this season? And obviously, they have played against good sides, but early on the season, they are conceding more kind of deep completions. So those are like successful passes into their own kind of danger zone, and the pass completion against them is very, very high, whereas last season it was very, very low. They were able to disrupt opposition. So it'd be interesting to see whether teams can adapt or whether this just shakes out over time. I still think they're going to be really good, but when you play a certain style for a certain while, like you tend to find teams do adapt at least a little bit. So it'd be interesting to see how they do against sides that sit deeper or sides that are able to play around.
They're just a horror team to play
The
against.
problem with the Champions League draw, we'll find out. We'll know by Sunday. But like the way the seedings are, they could either get a horrific group or they could get like Feyenoord and Red Star and someone else. Like it's.
But I think they would love a hard group.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think
So do I.
teams are going to hate going there. And I actually think Newcastle's plan kind of works best against a side that wants to come out at them and kind of thinks, yeah, we have 60% of the ball in Germany. I think that Newcastle gobble them up in midfield, really.
Yeah, let's keep going then. Nottingham Forest. Pat, I know you're not a huge fan at the moment, but Ash Young is. He says, Forest, we've progressed. The same amount of away goals scored already, and as we'd scored by mid-January last year. Taiwo is the real deal.
Yes.
We'll put the rest of it up on the screen now because it's quite long to read. But yeah, I think Awani continues to be a massive positive, doesn't he?
Such
Seven
good
consecutive Premier League games he's scored in now, which I think is a record. Well, they're only the third African player ever to do that after Mohamed Salah and Adebayor,
Okay.
I think.
I was
9 and
saying.
7.
I was saying West Ham should have gone real hard for him. I thought he would have been.
It
perfect.
would take massive money to get him.
Awani is a really, really good forward, and if they
really
can
good.
keep Brennan Johnson as well.
Well,
then
Hudson-Odoi arrived as well.
Hudson-Odoi too. They've got, and he played well under Steve Cooper. He knows him well from many years. So, yeah, I think they'll just be about okay. That defense is worrying as
Starting
as
back
Ash-
three is the biggest problem.
Yeah,
isn't it?
as Ash has pointed to. And there's been lots of change in that defensive area too. Lodi, they obviously had like 2 keepers last season. So once they can sort that out, then I think they'll be okay. Last year, I thought they were doomed, and they surprised us. And their home form does seem to be a real positive. Like the City ground does seem
It's
to
a
get
hard
them
place
over
to
the
go.
line.
And they've
Yeah.
taken a bit of a punt, haven't they? I think his name is Murillo, the Brazilian centre-back, that is a bit of an unknown quantity. So they obviously lost players that they had on loan last season, i.e. the Atletico pairing. So I think backline-wise, does need a bit of improvement. But Pat?
I'm much more positive about them this season. Like my issue with them, I didn't have an issue with them last season. It was more that they spent an absolute ton of money and they were crap. Like they were really, really lucky not to get relegated. Really, really lucky.
Yeah, they were.
They were one of the worst teams in the league, both to watch and in the stats. And they were lucky to stay up. But I do think that they needed someone just to get shots. Like Brennan Johnson basically didn't really do that much in attack all season long. They need somebody there to get shots. Unfortunately, they've got a guy who's amazing at it. So I think they've got the talent absolutely to be decent.
Gibbs White as well.
I would like to see Gibbs White has been great. But they just need to. We now need to see it gel and them go up a level because they've spent enough money that they should be aiming for sort of 14th, 15th this season.
Yeah.
In my
Be
opinion.
interesting to see if Ndidi comes through the door as well on deadline day.
That's kind of fun. Yeah.
Which is kind of a fun one. Sheffield United up next. Dan says, it's not taught the Blades much as we'd written the first few weeks off before the season started due to a poor start in the window. We'll learn a lot about the team based off the Everton game. I'm not going to lie, there weren't loads of Sheffield United contributors.
Where are your commas, Dan?
To the Twitter sphere, but I mean, it's a tough start, isn't it? They do look a bit ragged, and the forward line just hasn't been improved enough as we sit here today.
You say that. I think Archer is a really fun.
But he hasn't played yet. He hasn't played a minute yet.
Well,
it's a
give
good
him an
signing. I agree, it's a
opportunity.
good signing, but like it's a lot to replace Ilian Mdai.
I know. Benny Traore. I don't think that's good enough as a forward option. I agree with you, but I don't. What are the expectations for the Sheffield United team? I think
Not to sell Ilian Mdai and Sander Berge 3 weeks before the season starts.
I agree with you.
Fair point.
Harmer, I think, is a good addition to midfield. He was great last year for Coventry, and he's already popped up with like a wicked goal so far. I think again this team needs a little time, but again, I don't think many people were expecting Heckingbottom to get them up last season. It's just they're probably ahead of where they intended to be at this point in time too.
Definitely.
So let's just be rational. Against City, I know Haaland had an off day, but they at least for having no shots and like 19% of the ball up to the 71st minute to go behind and at least come back. Like they showed something. I'm not. Again, their home.
It's
form's
going to be a
huge.
struggle for them to stay in the league. isn't it?
Unbelievable.
But let's keep moving on to Spurs. The Spurs camp on Twitter says our starting 11 is capable of getting top 4. Any long-term injury to any of that 11 though, and we're in trouble. I would probably agree with that. Like, I think that the starting 11 has real high-level quality to it, and Anja started the season really, really well. But there is major depth issues in the forward line, in centre-back, and in centre-mid. Like, the entire spine of the team is on a knife edge. If Van der Ven gets injured at any stage, who on earth... Like, Ben Davies is back in there. If Basuma gets injured, Like, is Højbjerg now back in the picture?
They do have
given they've been
Bentancur
trying to
to come
offload
back.
him. Yeah, they do have Bentancur to come back, who could potentially play in there. If Madison gets injured, where's the creativity come from?
Well, you could move Kulusevski inside and you'd have to do something else, yeah.
Yeah,
You'd have to,
I just
funky stuff.
It's very, very thin on the line, and I think that was proven out, wasn't it? Really, in that quite humiliating Carabao Cup exit to Fulham.
Nothing
midweek.
humiliating about that.
It was, mate.
Nothing
It
humiliating.
was.
Whatever.
You cannot afford to write the Carabao Cup off. I'm
Yeah,
sorry
you
if
can.
you're Spurs and you haven't won a trophy
I
in
guess.
15 years. Like, 9 changes for that game.
We made loads of changes
When
too.
you're not playing midweek, like in any other competition.
It's not unreasonable, though, to say we signed Perisic on a 2-year deal. 1 year into that deal, he should be like a good enough backup. And the fact he isn't is
Yeah.
kind of on the team that recruited him.
And I think Perisic would have probably done an okay job if he wasn't alongside 9 other changes. I think when you make that many changes to the first team, you're effectively saying this competition means nothing to us. Like,
Sure.
It's not even in our thought process. And when they haven't got any European football, that surprised me from Ange. I think that was probably his first mistake because he's been brilliant with the media, he's been brilliant with the players, the tactics seem to be spot on. Some of the signings have been excellent.
But
I don't know.
But don't you think it's a bit... you're kind of like putting him in an impossible position in that you're like, they've got no depth, but also how dare they rotate for a cup competition? It's like, yeah, they've got no depth, so they have to rotate because if one
Do
of
they
their
have to
first...
rotate?
Well, yeah, because like, as this guy said...
They can play a maximum of
if
40
they're-
games.
If they're starting 11, like, any of those players get injured, then they're in serious trouble. And I think it makes sense to prioritise the league.
But they've got a maximum of 42 games.
That's still quite a lot of games. Like, I mean, like, to ask someone like Basuma, who played, like, under 11 full 90s last season to start every game. It's like, Basuma's been unbelievable.
Yeah, so good.
I'm quite bullish on Spurs if the fitness is there. If it's not there, it'll be a difficulty. But like,
And the goals. Is
They're
there enough
going
goals?
also
to
giving up a lot of
sign. They're going to
shots.
sign some
A lot of
players
shots.
by the time this has gone out. Like I call it what I was reading. They've
But
been
they've got to
lining
shift
up
players on, haven't
They're
they?
lining up lots of deals, and they're going to basically wait and see what happens by the end of the window. I think we could be in for a
I
surprise.
like
with
Spurs, man.
Yeah.
I like Spurs. I think they've been playing well. I like Ange. I do like the first
Yeah.
11.
We all like
I think
Ange a lot, though.
everyone for years was like, if they sell Kane, they'll be bottom half of the league. No, they won't. They'll be fine.
Yeah. But maybe reinvest some of that Kane cash.
That would be good.
Into a forward.
And don't do it on Brennan Johnson.
Okay, let's go
agreed.
to the next side, which is West Ham United. Malak says, West Ham, I think we are really going to be a hard team to beat this year with our starting 11, but our fullbacks are weak. Also still unconvinced about Moyes.
7 points so far.
Yeah, calm down, you baby. Jesus, everybody's just whining. Everyone's like, oh, we should have a better manager. We should have better players. It's like, it's actually quite hard to find better managers and better players. Like, David Moyes won you a trophy. Shut up. Like, Palmieri's been pretty good this season. Soufal's been bad. But Palmieri's, you know, putting up lots of defensive actions, winning a high percentage of them. I still think he's quite an interesting player.
Linked with Kostic heavily today.
Sure, like, go and get that, though he's more of a back three kind of
Wing-back,
guy. He's
yeah.
a wing-back guy. But they've had 27% possession in their 3 games so
Love
far.
it.
27%.
I love that.
The lowest in the league. Like,
Let's
they do
go.
not care. But, like, I don't know. We've always basically said about them, if Bowen's on Song and Antonio's fit, they're fine. And
Yeah.
both those things are true. And they've added Kudus. It's so sick. Like, I think Alvarez might be good. Don't like Ward-Prowse. I think,
Oh, come on. He's been
yeah,
unbelievable
yeah.
so
I think-
far.
Okay, but I think it's one of those things where people were simultaneously, like, they were saying, in like those first games, they were like, Ward-Prowse has been good, but people are playing through our midfield too easily. And I was like, I wonder.
Nah, his defensive
I wonder
numbers are
why
really
that
good.
Would be.
His defensive numbers are really good.
He's just got horrible mobility, but like, sure, go and get him. It's
He
fine.
runs more than anyone else in the league, doesn't he? More
Yeah, but that
Prowse?
doesn't actually mean he gets anywhere. Like,
goal, he's got
Granit
2
Xhaka used to
assists
run a lot
so
for
far.
us, but everyone ran past him.
Come on, he's the
High
most
level
West Ham
player.
signing going.
I know, but that
He's
doesn't mean it's
he's
good.
so fine.
Saying it's the most
Like,
West Ham signing going
Yeah, they're good.
is not the compliment you think
No,
it
it's
is.
completely fine.
Yeah,
They've
it's
been-
fine. It's fine. I wouldn't have done it personally. I think I agree. West Ham are going to be hard to beat. They're fine.
I loved that Brighton victory. I love the fact
Yeah, so did
all
I.
they did is lump it up and then score some actually pretty insane goals. Antonio
Yeah, they
is
didn't
getting
just lump it
better
up.
and better. They've got a good forward.
He's not getting better and better. He was horrible last season. He was
Nah.
amazing the season before.
just overran. He's just overused.
Yeah, but that's because he's at the age now where you do have to kind of.
I'm talking about like, his
ability.
literal instincts as a striker.
Oh no,
His
I love
finishing.
Antonio, but my issue is that you just cannot rely on him being fit. That's what sucks
And who's
about
the backup?
Antonio.
They're trying to get in the
Kudus?
They're trying to get in the
I
Serie.
dunno.
They'll do something. They'll be fine.
If Paquetá gets banned, that would suck for them. If he stays, then great. You know, if everybody's fit, I really like West Ham. I think West Ham will be fine. But I will note that we were quite positive on West Ham last season when West Ham fans were not. So, shut up.
Shut up.
Final team then is Wolverhampton Wanderers. Kieran Hughes says Wolves are really committed to a shift in style, that the strength is actually pretty good in the squad, lots of good cover, and will be fine this year. Maybe saying this before Mateus. I think he actually tweeted this before Mateus left.
Quite confident.
I actually don't mind that Wolves squad. I was pretty harsh on them. I think I had them in my relegation 3. But after seeing them in the opening few weeks, I think the midfield is a big positive. Prior to the Mateus Nunes exit, I think Lamina was a really, really good pickup in that January window. I think Gomes looks really solid in there. And in forward areas, if Kaladzic can stay fit, Cunha, Neto, Cadence, I think it's fine. There's just not enough goals. It's just not enough goals.
I think Kaladzic coming back and fit and getting off the mark is really important. I
not
like
a huge goal scorer though. Any time in his career.
Yeah, but he's a great option up there, isn't he? Because he's just
I don't know. I mean, limited minutes at Stuttgart, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he adds an element. Not many teams in the division have like a 6'7" striker who can do something at the moment. So,
for a reason.
Yeah. Well, no, Clyde.
Yeah, because there aren't that many people who are 6'7" in the Welsh.
Yeah. So I like Gary O'Neill. I'm really pleased that he got given another opportunity to show what he could do. It's going to be a bit of a dogfight this season, but like you said, they've still got Pedence, Neto, etc. They've still got some exciting guys that can produce stuff in like that, which a lot of other teams don't have that luxury. So. Yeah, I don't think they're going to get relegated. I'm a bit more positive. After the first few games, I'm definitely way more positive than I was pre-season.
Yeah. Wolves fans, let us know what you think in the comments below, and let us know what you think, if you're not a Wolves fan, of our statements about your club at home. Stay tuned for Monday Vibes as well, and I'm sure we'll be reacting some of the deadline day information that we may well have missed on this episode. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. See you later. Goodbye.